Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what the wetlands are all about and what makes them such an important part of the ecosystem. So we're going to first start out talking about what the wetlands are. So really they're classified in your book definition as any land area that is covered with a shallow layer of water during some or all of the year. So it really needs to have that continual source of water to have it always be underwater or to be recharging it throughout the year. Usually the shape of land where you're going to find these wetlands is kind of a floodplain punch bowl kind of a shape. It's going to be below sea level so that water can stay in it almost permanently throughout the year. And that punch bowl shape will keep the water in. So a regular floodplain, the water can drain out because it's simply just downslope. But if it's a kind of curved, almost like a bowl shape, water goes in, but it can't get out. And that's really where you get the wetland ecosystem. And they come in a variety of sizes, so within 1 year, usually you'll find a dry season where the wetland will get much, much smaller, and then it'll almost look flooded during those wet times. Okay, so there are two different types of wetlands we're going to talk about. The freshwater is up first. So there are three most common kinds of freshwater wetlands where you're going to find them to be just in mainly freshwater sources. So most of them are going to have either three of these traits. So the first one is the marshes. Marshes have a very tall, grassy look to them. So you're not usually going to see a ton of trees around a marsh. Tall grasses, you're going to have like cattails, those big reeds, and also it's going to be covered with a shallow amount of water. Then you've got swamps. Swamps have more like flooded forests, really. Tons of trees, a lot of shade because the trees kind of act like a canopy, blocking and protecting what's beneath it from sunlight, from wind, from storms and such. So it really creates a very unique ecosystem where you're going to have creatures that are a lot more fragile because they typically would not be able to survive in a harsher environment. So usually you're going to find swamps in warmer, humid climates, places like Louisiana, down by the Gulf, or Florida, regions like that. And the third kind are a bog. Bogs are located much farther north in cooler climates. Basically, it's when ice or snow melts, and there's again that kind of bowl shape divot left in the land from that ice, so that the ice water can't evaporate out or get out. So it creates this kind of bog environment. One of the characteristics of a bog is that it's very much covered in a lot of moss. Moss is oftentimes kind of blanketing and coating over the rocks. So next up, we're moving on to coastal wetlands. And coastal wetlands are going to contain both freshwater and saltwater, so both of them combined. Usually you're going to get these in areas where freshwater, like a river or stream, is emptying out into a larger ocean or sea where it's got a bunch of salt water. So it's that very specific boundary line where they meet up before they have a chance to mix. So the first one is the salt marshes. Again, it's a marsh, so it's going to have the really tall, grassy look to it down here. With lots of water, except for this water is going to be salt. So you do see different marine life around this. One of the more famous salt marshes in the U.S. is the Chesapeake Bay, so kind of nearby Cape Cod. So usually you find the salt marshes along the east and the west coastlines of the U.S., whereas over here we have the mangrove forests. Mangrove trees are one of my favorites. They're very unique. It looks like they're growing out of water. Well, they're growing, yeah, they're in water, but the roots go all the way down to the floor where they have attached themselves. But that floor of that water is very shallow, so they don't have far to go. But they have these very unique, characteristic tangled roots. That's how you know it's always a mangrove tree. And we do have some mangrove forest in the United States, but those are mainly going to be located in the southeastern coast, around the Gulf Coast. So why are they important? Well, they're important to plants because there's so much nutrients in a wetland for the plants to really thrive. So one characteristic of a wetland is always just the variety and the abundance of plants. So many tall grasses, like over here you see the cottontails, but you could also have something so delicate and fragile like a lily pad. And the main reason for that is because it's just so sheltered. There's not flowing water to wash it away. There's not fast-moving currents. So plants there are pretty protected, and you can have a very wide variety. And because you don't get that refreshment of the currents and new water coming in all the time, the water in the soil just get more and more nutrient. So really good fertilizer for the plants. So next up is animals. They are important to animals. In a wetland area, you see an abundant amount of insects and fish. And those will help create more of the larger type animals coming into the area for food so that they can eat the insects and the fish. So you get more larger animals like birds, amphibians, and reptiles. Many of the birds are actually migratory animals. They come to the wetlands, particularly in the wintertime, because usually wetlands are located in warmer climates, and that they can get lots and lots of food, and will stay there throughout the wintertime. So a lot of variety of animals will live in the wetlands. But let's talk about why it's important to people. So in the 1970s, laws were passed that helped protect the wetlands because beforehand, people were bulldozing the wetlands and building up large condo construction sites for homes because usually wetlands are located in a very beautiful scenic landscape, perfect for a hotel. So they protect the wetlands now, so it's illegal to build on them most of the time. Wetlands will help protect the land and the oceans by being natural filters. So the wetlands, like down here in this picture, wetlands are great at absorbing and collecting pollutants that wash off from the land. They collect them there in the root systems and in their tall grasses so that they don't enter into the ocean. And although we don't like to talk about getting pollutants in the wetlands, it's a lot easier to clean up a wetland than it is to clean up the ocean. So that is definitely a nice kind of barrier that it creates for us and our oceans. Another thing it does to the people and mainly to our land is that it helps reduce flooding. All of those root systems in the plants, we talked about this earlier, that they help to reduce erosion because it stabilizes the ground and soaks up that water. So it will help keep the land intact along the coastlines and not wash out into the oceans. And last, it is a wonderful place for agriculture. We do grow some of our crops there. For example, cranberries. Cranberries are great for wetland areas. They're the ones that float on top of the water. Wetlands are perfect for this because the water in them keep the temperatures at a pretty moderate temperature, so you don't really get extreme temperature changes. And the wetlands will actually store water for longer, so in times of droughts or dry times, the wetlands will still be able to produce plenty of nutrients for plants. And that is the end of this note-taking.